Welcome to the Innovators Insider Podcast. I'm Richard Doyle, the user group guy, and we've got a great show for you today. We've got a couple of our Onshape ambassadors, and what we hope will become a regular segment, we've got John McEleney, the Corporate Vice President of Strategy here at PTC. And we've got another great guest too, but I'm going to let my co-host, Michael LaFleche, the professor, bring in our other guest. Hello, Michael. Good to see you.
Hey, Richard. How are you doing? It's a good day in Vegas.
Yeah, fantastic day. Got a little bit cooler weather. Kind of broke the hot streak, but we'll be back into the 90s by next week. So,
oh my gosh,
looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a nice day here in Boston. I was just stepped outside. It's beautiful, sunny. It's a great day. So,
good day. Good day to be inside doing a podcast. Then.
Oh, exactly. So, another person who looks like he had very balmy weather that we're going to pull on to the show here, reporting live from a trade show in Anaheim, is our friend, Greg Paulsen from Zometry. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Greg, what is your title at Zometry?
I am the Director of Application Engineering at Zometry. But what that really means is it's a generic title that allows me to be in a lot of different projects and champion a lot of different things from both manufacturing, design, and technology perspectives.
That's amazing. So I'm sure our listeners know that a little bit about Zometry, but I bet you could tell us a little bit more. I mean, Zometry, I've seen it out there for many years, but you're going to do a much better job of explaining what Zometry is than I am.
Yeah, well, I'm always happy to talk about it. And actually, I've been with Zometry for 8 years, and Zometry is about 8 years old. So I've seen it go from us being at a small conference table, figuring out what we're going to do, going all the way to going public last June as a company, and a company nearing 1,000 employees and global. But yeah, what is Zometry? We are a digital manufacturing marketplace. So just like how Airbnb worked in the lodging industry, Uber and transportation, Amazon and retail, Zometry looked at the manufacturing world and saw a lot of inefficiencies, especially a lot of opacity where the people who are buying, the people, your designers, people using CAD design software, needed parts made, and they only knew maybe who they found for suppliers, and sometimes that right supplier they just never had access to it, just never even knew they existed, because no matter what you search, no matter how you search for it. And the exact same problem is on the supplier side, where they're typically working local to local, have a lot of talent, have a lot of capabilities, but are essentially working within their pond, and sometimes are getting projects that may not be the best fit for them, or just maybe sitting there with idle machines. So what Zometry has done is created a digital platform that for designers, they can go and upload their 3D model, their technical data package, and get instant pricing and lead times. We actually use AI trained algorithms to determine pricing lead times in over a dozen manufacturing technologies, everything from machining to 3D printing, injection molding, urethane casting, sheet metal, sheet cutting, and beyond from there. And when you press buy, it actually gets connected. And again, it's very Ubery in this standpoint with the suppliers that can do that project best. So we're trying to match that sweet spot. I love doing brass turn CNC parts, and it goes to they get those brass turn parts. I do fifth axis machining. I 3D print selective laser centered nylon, and we're able to match that using our platform. So it is an extremely scalable, extremely resilient platform for on-demand manufacturing.
Absolutely.
And so you mentioned that that designers, engineers can upload their CAD data. Let's talk about that a little bit, how that's accomplished, and especially with Onshape. You guys have a new app, one that I was excited to see. Well, I'll let you explain it, but there's just one part of it that I just think is brilliant. So tell us a little bit about the app.
Yeah, well, the cool thing that we always look at is we have this web-based platform where you upload your files online, and it's very good, and it's heavily used. But we want to meet our engineers where they are, which happens to be in that design phase. Like I am in my CAD instance, I'm in Onshape, I am creating my product. What if instead of just, making that shape and then throwing it over to a platform and getting the feedback, what if I was able to get that feedback like right then and there? And so we started pursuing CAD apps, adding apps to various CAD platforms, and Onshape is the latest and greatest. So we launched the Onshape Instant Pricing app. So if you search Zometry within the Onshape App Store, you can subscribe to it. It's completely free to use. And you have a lot of really cool features, including that instant pricing, including that getting those lead times, being able to configure various combinations of processes. So not just one process, but multiple processes, materials, and finishes. And Richard, I am bearing the lead here. It's about what else you can do when you're in the design phase, which is I can make changes. So how cool is it if I get to design for manufacturability feedback right in that app? And that's something that we were able to do. And in this case for the Onshape, we were able to go further, where you actually see a 3D representation of your part, and it highlights that DFM feedback for you right then and there, so you can go and make edits. You see sharp internal corners, you see other features, and as you change processes, you'll see that DFM change and ebb and sometimes disappear. If you go to 3D printing, sometimes it just completely disappears, because 3D printing is a very forgiving manufacturing process. But you go to machining or sheet, you may get some different feedback there.
And that's so far my favorite thing about the app. And you did a way better job of describing it. I'm just as excited about it, I think, as you are, but I probably just would have mumbled through that whole thing. So thanks for explaining it so well, Greg.
Yeah, I always like this idea too, when you are designing to see a price. I'm not sure if you're like me, but I like to, when I design something, I'm like, this is really cool. Now let me just click on that radius feature now and add radius, and I just start curving away. Just start creating all these very sexy organic shapes on my parts, and then you press reanalyze, and you're like, oh, ooh,
maybe
for
I
this
shouldn't have done that.
maybe I should go ahead and change that or redact that or move it to a chamfer or something like that's much more easily machined.
That's great. So real quick then, what's in the future for Zometry?
Oh yeah. So the future is always trying to add and enhance. We can do more. So this is the first gen of what we're doing with the Onshape app, showing that visual DFM. We're hoping we actually have on the listing on Onshape, we have a little user feedback survey. So I encourage everybody to go subscribe. Again, it's completely free. Try it out and give some feedback on it. There's certain things, like right now it's serving North America domestic market, so just Zometry.com. But we do have a European market as well, and we're growing out into Asia. So we're hoping to expand this app's features for those global opportunities, and we hope to just get better, improve our feedback, our pricing, expand our optionality with that. So this is just the very beginning.
Yep. Sounds like you guys are well on your way. Well, congratulations on a great 8 years. Congratulations on the new app. Like I say, I'm so excited about the Onshape app. And I don't do design for a living anymore, so I probably won't get any parts actually made, but I'm sure going to price a bunch of them out.
Well, you never know. It might be something for the tiny house, custom bracketry or something, Richard. Come on.
That's true. That's true.
It's actually interesting. So we have, on the lower cost side, we have things like PLA. So if you don't have your own desktop 3D printer, you could choose prototyping PLA under FDM, which is a fused deposition model 3D printing. But even like some materials like selective laser sintering are just far beyond what a desktop printer can do. Sure. And you may find like selective laser sintering and multi-jet fusion, which both build parts out of fusing typically a nylon powder together. It can be very economical even at low quantities. So it's always great to try out and see if it fits your bill.
Yep. And those processes tend to create can create bigger parts as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Bigger machines, bigger parts. Yeah. Well, Greg, thank you very much for joining us. It's been very interesting, very exciting. And like I say, good luck to Zometry in the future, and we hope to have you back soon.
Thank you so much.
Nice to see you, Greg.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to keep playing with the tool and order some parts. It's quite liberating, like, being able to use like one of those really high-end printers, for example, that you'd never have access to. You can just have them make some parts up for you and see what happens. I mean, it's so easy to do.
Yep. That's a great little app too.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get going. So, the Onshape community is really strong. We've got some great community initiatives. The Onshape forums, always very active. Lots of users in there helping each other out. We've got our Onshape user groups that meet almost once a week, pretty much once a week at various times. But we've also got the Onshape Ambassador Program, and that was launched several years ago. Currently boasts dozens of members, and these Onshape ambassadors help us out. They help by sharing success stories with us. They participate in webinars and other events. They also provide valuable feedback on product improvements, and pretty much they really help us increase brand awareness. And now for their part, they gain insight into Onshape's product roadmap. They get a little insight into that. They get to share their input on future features and services. They get to take advanced training courses and certification tests free of charge if you're an ambassador. They all get a nice little swag package and a digital badge for their social media accounts. And I think most importantly, they get together with a Slack workplace, private Slack workplace that we call the Onshape Embassy. And we are lucky enough to have two of our ambassadors here with us today. So let's bring in Sam Holland and Bryan Lagrange. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, Sam.
How are you?
Good. Yeah, doing well.
Good. Well, let me start off a little bit about Sam. Sam, you're the co-founder of Informal, which is a collective of hardware freelance engineers and designers. You've also worked at a few New York City startups, right? MakerBot and Mevo.
Yep.
And now you're doing full-time freelancing, and your focus is really on injection molded parts, sheet metal, and die-cast products with integrated circuits. Does that about cover your bio?
You did a better job than I could. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Bryan, I've known Bryan for a long time. Bryan's the CAD manager down at Mezco Fabrication in Louisiana. They're a custom metal fabricator, sheet metal cutting company. In addition to being an Onshape ambassador, Bryan's also a member of the Onshape User Group Advisory Board. He hosts online meetings several times a year. If you join one of Bryan's meetings, you'll always be eligible to win a nice prize. He's one of the advisory board members that always brings something to give away. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about the ambassador program. Sam, I'll start with you. Why did you decide to become an Onshape ambassador?
I was calling myself like an Onshape evangelist years ago. I switched over when I was working at Logitech Mevo, and I immediately fell in love. And anyone who I could corner at a bar or any of my buddies who were SOLIDWORKS people, I would always be like, "You got to try this thing out." And just following it's the only software that I've ever actually been excited about feature updates and new things coming down the line. And when the ambassador program started, I immediately jumped on it. Just, more people like me who love new things with a great tool.
Wow. So you get excited about update. You must stay excited all the time, given that we do that every 3 weeks, right?
Oh, I love refreshing the page when I see it. The other day on LinkedIn, you guys had a new one. It was actually on this podcast, and I immediately opened Onshape, checked out the feature notes. So it's great.
Great. Hey, Bryan, same question. Why did you become an ambassador?
Pretty much similar to Sam. I mean, when I got a hold of Onshape and tested it for the first time, I couldn't spread the word enough about Onshape, and I would walk around with my phone. Look, I'm on my phone, which was amazing.
Yeah, I think we've probably all done that at one point or another, right?
And it's the community through the forum, and just trying to find out more, and then more like minds and more Onshape crazy people who just love Onshape and want to spread the word. And that's kind of why I joined Ambassador, spread the word of this great.
Very nice. So let's stick with you for a second here, Bryan. So you guys get some perks for being ambassadors. Get an early look at some of the new functionality, some of the new features, the swag bag, that kind of thing. But in your opinion, what's the best thing that's happened to you since you became an Onshape ambassador?
I guess the best thing is I'm going to go on the community side. Just once you put that badge on, especially like in LinkedIn, I get messaged all the time. Hey, I see you're an ambassador. Tell me about Onshape. Use it? How much? Using it on real projects? Is it real CAD? And that's where I get to start spreading the word.
Nice.
It's a great tool. And then also just the swag. I think every vacation I've been since I got the little swag, I wear the shirt big. I went to the Space Center in Birmingham and Rocket Center and had the Onshape shirt, taking pictures, and I could see people looking like, and some people are like, "You're in shape, you're on shape." Wait, it's CAD software, not help.
I had a similar experience walking through the pit area at the BattleBots with my Onshape shirt on, and people would look at you and kind of point. You could tell they knew, what they were looking at, but they were more curious. So.
Right.
Sam, I guess we'll ask you the same question. What's the best thing that's happened to you since you became an Onshape ambassador?
I think similar to the community, that Slack channel has been really helpful. I recently was posting like workarounds and tips and tricks I found, and somebody recommended a feature script that replaced like what I thought was a really clever hack with a single move. And it was this like mind-blowing moment. It was like a derive and context feature script that absolutely changed how I'm doing modeling now. So even a model I made recently is now what I would consider outdated because I learned about a new feature. So it's those little hidden gems that you find and people surface and help each other out. It's been really cool.
Yep, sure. Yeah, I watch that Slack channel daily, and I see lots of messages going back and forth, and you guys all kind of getting together and collaborating on things and talking to each other, and I think that's just great.
Yeah.
So we asked you guys to both bring a model of the week. So you guys are going to be featured as our models of the week today, and I think Michael's going to drive the CAD here.
Yes, indeed. Let's start with Bryan's example here, because I think it's really interesting because it has a direct relationship with the user group stuff, right? So this, you can see this now, right?
Yep.
Great. So tell us just flew away. That thing's fast. Tell us a little bit about this, Bryan.
Well, as Richard mentioned, I'm part of the user group board, and the one thing I guess it's kind of ingrained in being Cajun. Whenever we have a get together, we give things away, whether it's the food we're making or gifts like this. And so I tried just to have something, you come to my meeting and you get a prize. And when I did this meeting, it was the first one where I wanted to do a theme meeting. Well, actually a second, because I did the tiny house for Richard. But this one I was kind of basing everything around race cars, Formula One. And so actually a colleague of mine, I was trying to think of something to give away. And he said, why don't you make an F1 car? And the first thing came up was, doing like the fall, like, wow, I don't have enough time. But I sat down, started thinking, and I've done different types of, I guess you could say, an adaptation, because we do sometimes some art type signage at the business. So basically the standoff type thing, I said, well, what if I just slice it and just put components and everything and give a representation, and that way, I don't have to make every detail, and I could just kind of be like a 2D that's going into a 3D when you start turning it and everything. So this is what I came up with. Just like I said, it was based off of the F1 theme. Got good feedback when I posted it on LinkedIn. I don't think I ever had that many likes on a post before. People saying, I want it, I need it. And like Richard chimed in, well, you got to come to the meeting, attend it all, and you get your chance. So.
That's it.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant model. I mean, it's simple in its design, but it's complex in its design. It fit the theme very well. And I was excited to see this. So thank you for bringing this one. I guess I guess I'll be seeing you in Las Vegas in late 2023, right? They just announced an F1 race. Yep, Formula One race in Las Vegas. So.
Yeah, maybe we could sit right on the strip watching.
There you go.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Bryan.
Hey, thank you.
All right, Sam, we've got a model from Sam too.
We do. Yeah, Sam's been doing really good on his design work. We've been talking about different designs, and let me share the one.
Yeah, we were playing with some renders recently too. That was fun.
Yeah, the rendering has been a lot of fun, especially in the consumer product design, kind of space.
Yeah.
And,
So
Richard, you picked this model with Sam to kind of look at. Let me just pull up something, the top level here. I love this model because of all of the different things that you added to this. You got really well structured here. You got your you brought in the DXF here. You got your sink marks here from doing a plastic filling simulation or something like that. You got a skeleton part studio, which is an excellent way of doing top level kind of top down product design. Tell us a little bit more. Don't let me steal all that.
No, you're doing a great job. I mean, this is how I strive to design consumer electronics housings. So using this skeleton model, breaking parts down, detailing them further, rebuilding them into assemblies. And this was kind of a demo I made for a user group presentation a few months back now, showing my best practices and tips and tricks I've learned. So ways to really quickly repeat screw boss features, or color specific faces to communicate color, material, and finish for injection molding. Using variables to figure out how to have the right nominal wall thickness at certain areas to prevent sink marks. So all these little tips and tricks. And this is the one in which actually I posted it and somebody in Slack said, hey, you could use XYZ, and it's a better method than what I have here. So this is actually already out of date in some ways because of these new feature scripts. But yeah, this is kind of my Bible for how to design parts. And it's what we do at Informal when we design parts. We try and follow a certain process like this.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's totally, you put on a clinic here on top-down design here with the skeleton and breaking things up in the part studio environment without having to deal with the C:\/ kind of file management like in the other CAD systems you'd have to do to get this kind of work done. In the other systems, it can be a little fragile doing this. It's powerful, but here, it's all here. You're not going to break any references by accident or anything like that. You have your first feature here, which is just coming in, and then you're going to do your details on the plastic components here, screw bosses, things like that. It's really good. Let's see, what else do you got in here? Oh, you got an old render here too. Let's take a look at that.
Yeah, this is before the release of the full render studio. So this is a while back now.
Yeah, it's still the same technology. So it's, you get this nice kind of, effect here, texturing on the front of this cover here. So it's really nice. Yeah. Nice. You're even using the link tab.
I love the link tab. I usually link to a color material finish document in Google Sheets. And so I can kind of have a live up to date view of, what each color on the surface may represent. And then at that point, we'll save it out as a PDF, send it out to a vendor. So really nice way to use it as a container of all knowledge around a product.
Yeah, definitely. I have to resubscribe to it on this particular account here, but yeah, it's really good to have that information right there at your fingertips without having to go get other things here. Let me just do that. I gotta Google my permissions here as well, but pretty cool that you can very quickly and easily add that app right to the application. These are great models of the week. I think we'll post the public links to them in the show notes, and this one's a very valuable one here as well to kind of see that. But both models of the week are excellent. I love the car because it's everybody loves giveaways. Whenever you go to a show, or you got Greg at the trade show out in Anaheim there, I'm sure there's giveaways galore out there. It's just one of those things people love.
Well, and you know, the car lends itself to different manufacturing options as well. You know, you could take that and make it like, you know, produce it like Bryan did out of steel, or, you know, 3D print it.
Exactly.
I'm gonna put one on the laser cutter, see if we can. I don't know how to do the wings yet, but we'll play around with that.
There you go.
Yeah. And then, make sure to add the Zometry app and to the App Store as well, so you can see the little tab there on the screen and get some quotes and do some DFM checks. It's really cool. It does actually show you, you know, visually, you know, there's a little preview there. It gives you a nice list, a checklist of all the things you did wrong, if you did anything wrong. So it's really, you know, not wrong, just, you know, it's checking to make sure you're delivering the best possible thing to get quoted on. So it gets quoted, it's quick to get. So it's really good. Geez, I mean, you know, you guys have done such a great job at, you know, being ambassadors to the community. Like, I always like to find out the origin story of every person the first time they saw Onshape or when it happened. You know, maybe Sam and Bryan, you could, you know, take a second and share that. You know, it's really fun to hear the origin stories.
Bryan, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll take it. I guess it was 2015, and I'm always looking what's out there, what's new, what's coming up. So I'm searching, and I just came across this little website. I think I might have been on a website called Solid Smack. I think they did an article. Oh, yeah. And so I clicked on the link, and it went everywhere. And then, like I said, I started feeling like, wow, I could design on my phone. I could use my old computer and it won't bog down. What? 3D, really? And so then I just started looking at more. I started going to the forums, and the first person, I guess, getting in contact was Bruce Bartlett, because he was there, and me and Bruce kind of talked because we had similar things we do, and as far as making parts out of steel and stainless and everything. And then from there, because this was even before sheet metal, I kind of did post in the forum, and Scott Harris even contacted, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. One of the founders is contacting me. And I mean, I did sit-ins, meetings with him and Lana as far as before sheet metal even got released, got the very first beta of looking at sheet metal to give my feedback and everything. So, like I said, it was just great. And in the beginning, I loved it where it was CAD anywhere, with the hashtag. I would try to post that because I think we had a tropical storm kind of pass through, but it wasn't real strong, and we were on the good side. But anyway, that day I did a model on my phone, and I had someone take a picture of me and held it outside. And I said, hey, catting through Tropical Storm Barry.
I remember that. I remember that post. Yeah, that was great. I chuckled out loud for sure.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Thanks, Bryan. How about you, Sam?
I think it was around 2017 or 2018, which feels like forever ago. I was working at MakerBot, and actually Matt Rohr, who's now at Onshape, he was managing our SolidWorks seats, and we heard about Onshape. We got a demo, and we were like, this is cool. It's going to need some time. And I kind of kept watching it. And I moved on to another company, and we were using Creo at the time. And I was like, there's got to be something else here. I want to play around and see other tools, and fell in love with Onshape, converted us over. I had a Chromebook that I would just carry around in my backpack and, charge it every couple of weeks basically. And I could run CAD on that, and it blew my mind. I could be anywhere I needed to, visit clients with a Chromebook. It was insane. I recently built a desktop, which is by all standards a terrible computer, and it streams through Onshape, and it was very inexpensive. So I don't know. I've shifted everything over for it, and I love it. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it is very freeing not having to worry about the devices that you're on and keeping them perfectly. I used to be a demo engineer all the time, like just trying to keep my, organization set and all the different demo sets and the way it would set up and work. And it was like such a if one thing was out of place, the whole thing was, you'd have to start over. I'd have to reformat my computer. It was a huge pain. But, it's so freeing just to be able to, here I am on my MacBook, and I get back to my office. I have my desktop here. I have my iPad. It's right there.
The other day I was in the woods, and a vendor in China sent me a message on WeChat saying, "I think you sent me the older file. Can you send me the new one?" And on my phone, I was able to open it up, save the step file, send it out in WeChat. Like, beautiful day in the middle of the woods in Vermont, and I'm still able to, get work done without running home and booting up the computer. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's always like one of the blockers we hear, like when people first look at Onshape and they haven't spent time in it for a long time. That's always the worry, like what happens if I'm up in my cabin in the woods in Maine, But we constantly hear stories from you like this, Sam, of fly fishing and being able to send a CAD model. It's like crazy. Thanks for sharing that. I always love hearing the origin stories, and it's really good to see how far you guys have come with Onshape, and thank you again for sharing. It really means a lot.
Yep. And thanks for everything you do as far as the user groups go, the ambassador program, and thank you very much for coming on our show. We really appreciate it.
It's
Great.
Thank you. And to plug in for the user group, I always say, bring a friend.
Bring a friend.
Bring a friend. Come in, join, go to the page. There's, like Richard said, there's always a meeting. It's virtual. Anywhere in the world you can join in and bring a friend. It's fun.
Great. I'll see you there. Thanks, guys.
See you guys later.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was fantastic. I think, next up we're going to have John McEleney. Yep. But really want to thank the ambassadors for joining us here today. Greg Paulsen from Zometry as well. We're really excited to have that app in the App Store. It's going to be so great for the community of Onshape users.
Yep, and I can't wait to see how they even improve upon it.
Well, let's bring in, one of the legends, I think, in the industry, somebody I've known for a really long time. You too, Richard, is John McEleney. John McEleney, co-founder of Onshape, former CEO of SOLIDWORKS. Welcome to the show, John.
Great to see you, Michael. Great to see you, Richard.
Thank you. Good to see you too, John.
Yeah, really, really excited to have you on the show and discuss, maybe, come on from time to time and give us your predictions on things, right? There's lots of stuff happening out in the world, lots of change, and you've seen a lot of stuff out there. We've had conversations, and I really would like to get some of your, kind of thoughts on things 2022 and beyond, right? So I'm sure you have a lot of candid feedback.
Sure. Well, one thing that maybe we can sort of take a perspective view, and I think there's a quote that Steve Jobs famously said that I think is very relevant, which is people way overestimate how quickly some technologies will be adopted. And then they way underestimate the impact that they will have once they are adopted. And I think when we look at kind of the engineering world, I think that's sort of the way in which we look at and view kind of the transformations that are happening, which engineering organizations are seeing all these things that are happening in our personal lives in terms of mobile tools, cloud tools that we use. And in the engineering world, being conservative as it is, they're sort of starting to move and adopt these tools. And people don't really understand the impact that can have in terms of transforming both your processes and the products that you can build, and just really how people will work across the globe. I in the past of people in the media have asked me to kind of stand up on a soapbox and talk about what might be happening in the future. And, the thing they never do is go back and say how wrong I was or how right I was. So I don't know what the scorecard is, but let me at least share some of the things I think are happening and will happen. One, it's very clear that there's a huge emphasis being put by organizations to move out of sort of manual and paper processes and really orient themselves of going more and more digital for everything that they do. We are going to, by nature, we're going to see the world change and transform to adopt sort of cloud-based tools as they go more digital. And then as they look at how the world is sort of changing, companies have to look at their own internal processes, and they have to remain sort of agile. It's not just about the things that they want to do, but how the world changes around them. And there's some great examples. We can go into a couple of these that, companies that have been very agile in terms of adapting to things around them changing. And as we see this, we're going to see, basically companies sort of dealing with legacy systems and processes and new processes, and how do they bridge that and manage that hybrid environment. And I think the umbrella theme throughout all of these is in a world that's getting more and more dangerous, if you will, both for on-premise as well as all other tools that we're using, is what's the role of security, and what's the best way that companies in fact can secure their data, protect themselves from ransomware, and make sure that that both their customers, their suppliers, and themselves are secure in an ever challenging environment. So, let's jump in. You pick the topics. We can talk about any and all of them.
Yeah. One of the things, when you're talking about digital transformation and how digital will transform the physical world, cloud tools seem to have a lot to do with that. It seems like it's if you're developing software now, it's going to be SaaS, it's going to be cloud. Obviously you have a stake in this. Maybe you could kind of share with us, how companies are working to adopt cloud native technologies.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you just even take Onshape, part of why we started Onshape is that, you had very powerful tools that were already out in the market in terms of allowing people to articulate their design and iterate on designs. The problem is that all of the energy to take care of the care and feeding of those systems, to make those systems work, started becoming disproportionately higher than the value that people were getting out of those systems. And so when you have new tools that become available, new platforms that allow you to rethink the problem, Onshape is a classic example of that. But there are other tools that people are adopting as they're trying to go through this whole transformation process. It's not just engineering. Think about it in our personal lives. Think about it in other parts of your lives. I mean, the most obvious example is when we think of email. I remember the days when email first were on the phone and people were like, oh, they'll never use the phone for email. Well, of course, that's where 90% of the email gets responded to now. Then you think about installing software and managing it to do all the different tasks you had, and you have to go to specific computers. Well, now people want access and ubiquity of applications. So they want to be able to log in anywhere, anytime, to be able to get access to things and be able to actually take action, whether it's to approve, whether it's to inform, or whether it's to share and collaborate. So that's happening throughout organizations. It's happening in our personal lives. It's happening in our professional lives. And so getting things digital, it makes it a little easier for organizations, of course, to track information, to manage information, to save information, and to try and remove ambiguity in terms of communication and removing the friction of how people work together. So we're seeing that happen in all aspects of our lives. I just think about the papers. It's tax time now, and it's just paper at this level. And that is a case where, I think the government and accountants have sort of moved to the process of taking physical paper and at least electronifying it, but they really haven't gone to where it's completely digital, where it's a platform that you're not reproducing the processes, but doing it electronically. They're really, we're going to get to the place where people can transform those processes, and it'll allow you to do things that you've never been able to do before. So it's a very exciting time. It's also going to be a challenging time because people have to change. And of course, as we all know, change is emotional and it's gut wrenching for organizations, but it's inevitable if we want to be more competitive and build better and better products and really improve the overall standard of living of people around the world.
Yeah, Richard and I, we remember the digital transformation 1.0 days, going from the drafting boards to the CAD systems, and anybody with a little bit of gray hair, it looks like all of us on the call can remember a little bit of that.
My first job was on a drawing board, and it's a major change that's happened right now, for sure.
Too. So, John, I think it's pretty obvious that more and more people are adopting cloud-based tools and cloud-based technologies. Do you think that's driven more by the technology itself or by the younger generation that's coming up, or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, I think whenever you look at major trends, it's usually not just one thing that's happening. There's usually sort of several vectors that are combining to kind of create enough of a forcing function to get people to really look at transforming and changing what they're doing. So I think it's first, as you point out, I think there's clearly a demographic shift. There's a whole cadre of people that are now in their 30s that have been using digital tools, internet web-based applications from their earliest days. There's a generation that's now entering the workforce in their first job, where their whole life has been sort of digital, mobile, and cloud-based tools, and they are not going to tolerate with having to install software and manage files and crashing of systems. They're expecting that I can work on this machine and I can shut it down and move over to another machine and completely gain access. So there's a demographic shift for sure. There's also, the impact of the environment of time constants have been changing. The time they get from concept to market is getting compressed, and that's market forces that are driving that. Think of the fashion industry. Not that I'm a fashionista by any stretch, but my daughter and my wife are interested in fashion. And if you think about just that world, it used to be that designers would come up with whatever their next year's designs were going to be in the catwalks of Paris and Milan. And then, magazines would take, wonderful glossy photos and put them in magazines, and then come out 6 months after the fashion show. And then when people wanted to buy product, they'd be going to the store 6 months later. So you had a year-long cycle time for some of these fashions. Well, guess what? Mobile applications, Instagram, hello. People see pictures on a catwalk, they want to buy it the next day. So if you're the manufacturer of a fashion outfit, you need to kind of compress that to be able to meet market demand. So by the very nature of that, it's forcing people to say, how can we transform what we're defining, what we're building, and how do we get it to market faster? So, it's certainly the demographics, it's certainly market pressure. And then it's just certainly of, how do we make a better experience for all of our engineers? There's a talent war out there now for people that want to be able to recruit and bring in new talent. And so making the environment better so that really people can spend the time for what they're getting paid to do. Engineers are expensive. They're valuable because they have lots of experience. They have a lot of intellectual power that they brought to the table through schooling and through practical experience. The last thing they want to sit there doing is a lot of mundane work. They want the systems to be able to automate it and manage it. And so we're getting better and better at improving kind of the processes of how people design and take the drudgery out of it, so they can spend the value add of what their experience is to iterating on products and customers and reliability and materials and engineering and quality, all the things about, and value engineering to get the cost down. So all of the things that they're professions, that's what they do, versus kind of the mundane tasks that they've dealt with, which fundamentally, going full circle about why we started Onshape, it was really about, looking at kind of all the non-value added activity and the heat loss due to friction of all the things that people were doing to care and feed the systems just to kind of get them to work. And so I think that's happening in every discipline throughout individual smaller companies up to medium and larger size companies as well.
One thing that's happened recently, we've been going through it, obviously. We work at Onshape, we work from home, we work remote. There's a hybrid work environment, work remote environment. So maybe you can share with us, your thoughts on whether you think that's going to stick around or not, or are we here to stay in the hybrid kind of work world? What do you see there?
Yeah. So I have a pretty strong view on full remote working. I think there are certain professions, certain tasks, certain jobs that allow complete remote working. If you're an accountant that's doing tax returns, you may be able to fully work remotely. If you're in a role that doesn't require, that's transactional by nature, Zoom and tools like that to communicate are very good. But if you're working in an environment or in an industry or a professional environment that requires you to interact with people, and there's a fair amount of ideation and sharing of information at a very detailed level, and where innovation happens, it's very hard to do that remotely. On top of that, when you think about companies and corporate cultures, you can't maintain. Well, first of all, you can't build but you certainly you can't build, but it's also equally hard to maintain a culture when you're not seeing and feeling and having the interaction on a personal level with people. Why? Because there's so many cues and so many decisions that get made in our daily lives through interacting with people face to face. So I think the pendulum swung, and people thought through the pandemic, everything's going to be remote. Anybody who owns office space, they're dead. Well, the fact of the matter is that's clearly not true. I mean, after 9/11, nobody wanted to be in the city until they wanted to be in the city. And of course, Manhattan real estate prices continued to go up. I think here the pendulum swung to people were believing everything could be remote. And the reality is, I think we are going to see somewhat of a hybrid environment for the following reasons. I think when people commute, there's a fair amount of wasted time and energy for those days that they may be commuting. And so the efficiency of having people be able to allow them to work remotely, for a couple of days out of the week may be beneficial on a recruiting basis, but also beneficial for the employees. But I also think that they're going to be face to face and they're going to come back into the office. And then there's some professions that require you to be in the office or be face to face. If you're going and doing work directly with a customer and helping them on site, you gotta be there. If you're dealing with any kind of physical repairs or it's not everybody works in the software world. So people need to be face to face to touch, feel, and diagnose hardware, install hardware, work with things. So I think hybrid environments are really going to be how it's going to emerge. I don't think we're not going to lose the idea of people working remotely, part-time, but from time to time. But I think they're also going to be back in shop, and I think people are going to want to be back in there. I know, speaking to my son and some of his friends that are kind of shortly a year, 2 years out of college, they love the flexibility, but they're really pining to be in an office environment, be around other people, and work, and learn.
For sure.
Yeah, I can boil it down to one sentence. I miss people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, by nature, as humans, we are in fact, people. We are species that like interaction and that we like being together. So I think that's going to permeate into the work environment as well.
It's good to know that, we do have tools and technologies available. The internet's been so helpful through this hybrid work environment time, and, everything's just worked, right? As far as the technology goes. And I really, customers of Onshape have been able to really, just kind of not miss a beat, when, kind of shifting over. So it's been really gratifying to see that.
It is. I mean, it's amazing. And to me, if we look at what happened to the student and academic portion of the users for Onshape, pre-pandemic, I don't know, what do we have? 70, 80,000 sort of education users of our software. Yeah. And now we have 1.8 million users. I mean, if you think about it, it was pretty obvious what happened. Many of them pre-pandemic didn't have hardware that people would lug around either in their laptops or at home to use install-based software. And so, all of a sudden the CAD lab, the door was locked because the door to the school was locked. And yes, some people could remote dial in and kind of network in, but it was kind of suboptimal to say the least. And to see how they adopted sort of cloud-based and Onshape specifically in terms of cloud-based tools was really a hockey stick. It was just simply amazing. And I think that industry will follow in that same vein.
Yeah, it's thinking of security and thinking of the padlock doors and things like that. Richard and I have discussions about this quite often, right, Richard, about security and things like that.
Yep, we saved the tough one for last, John. So being of the older generation myself, I know a lot of folks worry about the security of the cloud and having their files on the cloud. And, these are some of the same people that bank on the cloud and do everything else on the cloud. But when it comes to their design files and their engineering data, they're leery about that. So can you alleviate people's concerns? Can you talk a little bit about some of the security that might be put in place in the future to calm people's nerves, I guess?
Sure. Well, I think there's things that we've already done, not necessarily just in the future. But I think when you think about security, I think people, we're sitting here talking through our computers and, you look at your computer and you think, I can see it, therefore it's secure. And yet we know from industry data, we know from the Gartner Group to the horror stories of people that have lost things to ransomware, et cetera, about the amount of kind of viruses that are in people's personal machines, if you will, that there's untold amount of loss and damage that's done. Not to mention, forget security. Just I have a hard disk crash and I haven't saved things. What happens? And that happens all the time. So, you know, this notion of that what I have is ideal and that it's perfect today, you know, let's sort of dispel that myth right away. What's out there today for install-based software and people using it in their laptops or using in a workstation environment is completely a security nightmare. And people just way underestimate and discount the amount of risk that they're facing every day with their current system and current install-based software and current hardware. And so when I compare that to, you know, versus this ideal about kind of cloud-based solutions, well, it turns out that, you know, my question is, would you, if you look at the environment of perhaps Google, Amazon, that literally has a, you know, $50 billion business in the cloud, you know, both in terms of physical security and software security, the amount that is invested to ensure that people have a secure solution is tremendous. Secondly, you know, we're continuously, as a vendor, for example, we hire a ton of white hat hackers that continuously people are basically trying to penetrate our system. We have a ton of automation. We have a ton of software investments that go through on a continual basis that we're checking and trying to basically break our system. We also go through many industry certifications, SOC 2 and Type 2 certifications, which are very hard to get. Some of the highest levels of security that have been validated by some of the Fortune 20 companies in the globe in terms of the CIOs and their CISOs, the chief security officers that have gone through and validated Onshape and our solution. So, you know, I'll just give you a hypothetical to give a perspective. You know, the average size of a company that uses 3D CAD software, you know, tends to have maybe 3, 4, 5 engineers. You know, there's some very large companies, you know, a la Boeing, and then there's, you know, small single person consultancies and everywhere in between. And I just point out, let's just say that you're a 3 or 4 person engineering company, firm, whatever, product design company. You know, typically the person that's doing your security and doing your CAD management is, you know, probably a more senior person. Meaning senior in the sense of a user senior, meaning they've used it the longest time. They may be your CAD administrator. They're the ones that do the backups and some of the security. Now, my question is, let's imagine, just a hypothetical, that there's all kinds of state actors out there trying to get into your laptop to get access to data and to get to cloud systems. And imagine that there's a software, and there is, by the way, that I won't say is $1 billion. I won't even say 10 million, even though there are solutions out there that are, you know, $5-10 million. But let's just say $1 million, and you're a 4 person company, and that, let's just say that solution is really, really, really good. Define what that means, but at ensuring that your systems are safe from hackers, from people who are trying to steal your data, from ransomware, you name it. Now, my question to you is, that 4 person company, can you go and spend that $1 million to go and protect your infrastructure and your network? Of course you can't. Now, the question is, can you go and take that $1 million solution? Imagine if you're Onshape, for example, and that's our business, and take that $1 million, you know, sort of software, if you will, put it into our cloud infrastructure and manage it completely so that every user is getting benefit from that $1 million solution, and amortize it all over all of our users. And oh, by the way, let's say there's all of a sudden, you know, ransomware people knew nothing about until several years ago. Let's say there's ransomware too, and there's another $1 million solution that's out there. Again, can you go and install that second $1 million software solution if you're a 4 person company? Of course not. And yet, because we have an infrastructure, we're testing it, we've architected it for security, and we have the ability to take that and amortize it over all of our users, as well as imagine what Amazon's done in terms of, you know, what they're doing for their infrastructure. So it's far more secure than actually your own desktop solution. And so when we have this discussion, when I engage with CTOs or chief security officers or CIOs, they quickly move and get to the point very quickly about understanding that it's far more secure. And by the way, one of the things that most people don't realize is most of the security risks actually is usually, estranged employees that want to sort of download access data. And when you have cloud-based solutions, you got complete analytics to be able to understand who's done what, where, when, and how, and to protect it. And you get all kinds of permissions to control and manage it. So to me, the irony is when people ask that question, hopefully after a brief discussion like this, they realize that in fact their current environment is by almost every perspective far less secure than a cloud-based solution.
Right. I think you put it very well once. I think I heard you say this, like, people in the future will say, how are you not secure? How are you secure if you're not using the cloud? Right.
Right. They're going to look at it and sort of say, how could you guys have ever thought that you had a secure system when you were installing all the software and managing all your files locally? Like, how did you ever think that was secure?
Right.
That is the perspective that people will have, and it's starting to happen. But it's very clear that will be the perspective. Much like people sit there and say, how could you ever have done design on a drafting board when you look at today's 3D solid modeling systems? And yet, when 3D solid modeling was started, people were saying, oh, it's just faster to do a drawing board. It's faster. It's just, I can whip it out quicker.
Yeah.
Classic transformations, both in terms of platform transformations as well as demographic transformations.
Yeah. Yeah. We're right there right now.
Yep. And I just feel lucky to be old enough to have seen a lot of this in my lifetime. So.
Yeah. And also young enough to embrace the fact that the world has changed and getting on board with that early in terms of helping to, propagate, promote, and ensure that people are kind of riding the wave for the transformation so that they can better their organization. It's more secure, that they'll be able to attract the people they want to attract to work in the companies, and really reduce a lot of the heat loss or friction in the process and for our environment. I mean that on a global basis. That extra waste of making things to the wrong version, which happens every day, millions of times, that gets eliminated with tools like Onshape.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of kids in their early 20s, and they're in for quite a ride over the next 30 years.
Yep. And it's exciting.
Yep.
And we'll be there along with them. Don't count me out yet.
John, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show, and I hope we can make this a regular thing. I hope we can you can find a few minutes every couple of weeks to join us and bring some more of your insights and your predictions for our listeners.
I'll look forward to it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.